What up, tech nerds? It's Don with Don and Don. Don, how you doing?
Doing good. Back for episode 2.
Episode 2 of the tech show podcast thingy, where two friends just want to talk about shit, and maybe the internet will care. Today, we're going to be talking about the world's first microprocessor. Don, when I ask you, who do you think made the world's first microprocessor? What's your best guess?
I'd have to go with a legendary company like IBM.
And that's not an uncommon guess. In the week leading up to this, I asked some of my friends this very same question, and a lot of them did say IBM. Historically, famously though, Intel holds the public opinion of having the first commercially available microprocessor. And this is it right here. This is the Wikipedia page for it. This is one of the chips, right? And this is what it looked like before this came around. The chips, instead of being this big or this big, they used to be this big and heavy as fuck. They were like 10 to 20 pounds for a commercially available processor. But in 1971, Intel released this to the public, priced at only $60, $477 in today's money, which is fucking crazy, by the way. That's a whole nother story, finance show story. But this was a major feat of engineering at the time, and it was actually relatively cheap compared to what came before it, right? But what the public didn't know in 1971, and what they wouldn't find out until 1989, is that 2 years prior to this release, a guy by the name of Ray Holt and a team of others had, in secrecy, created the world's first microprocessor for the Navy's F-14 Tomcat fighter jet. And
this was only how many years ago?
So the program was kept in secrecy for about 25 years, a little bit longer. But this was in 1969, I believe, and we'll get into some dates later, but it was definitely before the Intel 4004.
So anybody who wants quick math on that, that's roughly about 57 years ago.
All right, so this, fellas, is the F-14 Tomcat, and I want you to take a look at its wings. What do you think?
I find it very interesting compared to what we have now.
Okay. But what made this aircraft so different than any other aircraft before it was actually its avionics systems, right? So the APG-71 radar, this is actually something that was used for many other aircraft past this. But the computer itself is what made this so special. If you saw in the video, the wings swept out. They changed angles. And this was actually the first aircraft in history to do that automatically. Before, you had to have a pilot who really knew what they were doing, change the sweep of the wings. And by the way, the purpose of changing the sweep of the wings is so that it can go faster. But in order to land, it needs more surface area to slow it down, especially landing on a naval aircraft carrier, where it's basically a moving flight deck of a fixed length. So you're going to need to have wider wings to land on a ship, and the wings need to be swept backwards to go faster. Right? Okay. And this was the first ever aircraft to do that via a computer. So pilot presses the button, and it does it for you. You know, if it weren't for this computer adjusting things all at once, you could have a situation where you're banking and you try to sweep the wings and your aircraft doesn't know what's going on and maybe spins out of control because of all the other factors of flight, basically, without going into too much detail on any specific factors of flight, because that's a whole nother episode that I'd have to prep for. But this computer did it all. It measured ambient temperatures, it measured air pressure, it measured how much air was coming in through different sensors, and basically was able to tell, okay, this is the direction, these are all your characteristics of flight, and this is exactly the angle and the speed that we need to sweep these wings at. And it was the first to ever do that. And the thing that made that possible was this computer right here, the air data computer, or the central air data computer, which, based on this picture, is made up of the MP944. And these are the chips. You can see them in the back right here. Mm-hmm. These are the chips.
Now, I have a question.
That Ray designed. What's up?
Do all 6 of these chips combine together to make the MP944? Or are they all each individually just a MP944 chip?
Good question. So these 6 individual chips, we can go into it in these documents that are on the GitHub, but they are collectively known as the MP944 chipset.
Okay.
And they technically work independently of each other, but it just wouldn't serve any real purpose unless you combine them all. So right here you have the chips. You have a PMU, or multiplication unit, a PDU, a division unit. Your RAS are basically registers that hold temporary values. And then, let's see if I can find them all working together. So here's another picture. Basically, the math that this thing was running was first done by hand. You can see all these equations and expressions, logarithmic expressions. Like, this guy was a fucking genius, and this was all to, look, slope, intercept, these are all aviation terms. He was able to figure out, based on critical flight science data, how to turn that into math. And then once he turned that into math, he was able to turn that into a computer by basically making Boolean logic expressions right here and turning them into basically theoretical chips, and keep abstracting layers and layers until you're met with something as a high level as this, which is showing you how everything works together.
Now, the one really important part is, how does this connect with the audience? Is this the pivotal moment to where we saw the transition into more safety initiatives going into like commercial planes? Was this carried over from the military to commercial?
No, this was more so, but that's a great question because it leads to a very interesting take on why the audience should care. This actually was an innovation in military history that changed every aircraft to follow. Every aircraft to follow that was to compete with the F-14 needed to have a computer that could match it or better. And this was the first instance of a computer in a jet, basically. And now, with 5th generation, 6th generation fighters, it's inconceivable to think of a jet without a computer. Especially when you're talking about military aviation and fighter jets. It's just incredible what these previous pilots were able to do without computers, and it's incredible how quickly the battlefield changed with this one guy making this one chipset. Right, so these are all the individual. Did I answer your question?
Yes, of course.
Okay, cool. And these are all the individual ones and zeros. This guy literally made mathematical expressions, made sure they theoretically worked, and then wrote out every single 1 and 0 that the computer would need to get in order to sweep the wings and to do all other sorts of calculations perfectly. And he programmed these by hand. He wrote every single 1 and 0 himself. And his brother was actually the one who came up with the software to help test these 1s and 0s to make sure that they were going to work before you punch them on a card, right? So here's his logic on how to turn that into clock cycles of a computer to use it efficiently. Basically like multi-threading without multi-threading. This is just called parallelism, where you say, okay, we're waiting on something to happen in this chip, but in the meantime, we can do something else on this chip. And without losing too much space, without multiple processing units, how do we make it go really, really fast? Is you just have to multitask, basically, and do a little bit of one task at every single possible time that you can. And so these are the tables that he used. And then his ones and zeros again. This was the thing his brother made to help him test the ones and zeros. And this is like basically a mock aircraft with your flight sensor data, whatever. And this right here, step number 5, submit the binary ones and zeros patterns to AMI to manufacture the ROM chips. The ones and zeros had to be submitted in the form of rolled paper tape. This was done before the internet, before hard drives, before floppy drives, no type of electronic storage. Paper was it. 2 years of work resulted in thousands of holes on a paper tape. So this paper tape right here, and this is the coolest fucking image ever, this paper tape right here was hand punched by Ray Holt. Looking at these ones and zeros on a piece of paper, he mailed that to a company, AMI, that manufactured the ROM chip with it etched in. The program was etched in, so you couldn't change it. And that was it. You have to wait a couple months, so like you couldn't make a mistake. And so these are your 6 chips again. This is a low-level look at your 6 chips. And so the crazy thing is that after the first time he punched thousands of zeros onto a piece of tape, he missed one bit. 1 0 was a 1, or 1 1 was a 0. We did the whole thing, and it was perfect on the second try, and the aircraft flew way before it was expected to fly, right? And we could, I don't want to take too much time, but all these documents are available for you to read. It has all the math. Everything is declassified now, and it is just an amazing feat of engineering. This guy was a mathematician, an aeronautical engineer, a computer scientist. He was everything, and he's still alive today, and he still teaches for free computer science classes just for the love of the game, right? And these are more pictures of F-14. These are more pictures of what the chips look like. Yeah, and these are all the chips onto one circuit board. And so that is the world's first microprocessor, critically changed aviation history forever. And when this was declassified, critically changed computers forever. This guy almost single-handedly, not that Intel's design was bad, it was great for its time, and it was commercially available for cheap. And this guy had an unlimited defense budget. But that is the world's first microprocessor.
Keep in mind, guys, those for only $60. Only $60 at the time, which came out to roughly about $450 in today's money. Do not forget the name Bill Holt, and I believe, what was it, Ray Holt?
Ray Holt and Bill Holt, yeah, they were brothers.
Way ahead of their time, complete geniuses. Obviously, one of their brothers passed away a little early. That's fine. Obviously, guys, there's just so many things that can go into this now. But let's just keep it moving forward. We will try to link you guys if he does any sort of videos of his classes. We'll try to make sure to link that. And moving on to our next topic. Our tech companies playing a shell game. They're cutting workers, their profits go up, they're raising prices, revenue goes up, they're blaming market conditions, investors applaud, customers complain, and all they get is more ads, more fees, and less ownership. Let's talk the numbers. With Netflix, Spotify, YouTube, Disney, Max, Hulu, and Apple TV, just to name a few, all of the major players in the industry have raised their prices in 2026 alone. They're calling it creepflation, where the price creeps up in so small persistent amounts but accumulates over time. Now, right here, as you can see on my graphic, we have 113,000 tech workers laid off in 2026, and that number has actually significantly increased since this graphic was made. It's actually sitting roughly between 150,000 to 186,000 now. Meanwhile, companies have already pledged and confirmed that they are due to spend $725 billion on AI in 2026 alone. So
just to interject, tech companies or tech jobs in general, that's what we were all told to do, by the way. We were all told, get a job in tech, you'll be set. And it's turning out to be one of the scariest jobs you can have right now. And the fact that those numbers are changing that drastically within a single year is just, I wonder where we're headed as a community. Like, how do we determine, are these people getting laid off? What are they to do? And are we going to eventually figure out a way out of this?
That's actually a very good point. The thing is that people don't realize at this current time that AI is nowhere nearly strong enough to actually take out entire development teams or just divisions and departments and companies and do the entire job of hundreds of people.
I mean, even a few people. I've seen hundreds of stories about AI fucking up critical business infrastructure, like letting people log on to people's Meta accounts, just by socially engineering AI with prompt injection, saying, oh, okay, let me reset the password in some funny words. And then people will get to reset the password. And it's all because these companies are getting greedy and firing people and putting AI in charge of things.
If the way I see it is the majority of these companies are going to dominate roughly about 90% of the market. If you go to the other 10% of the market, but it takes you out of the entire ecosystem, the majority of the time it's not worth it. So you're stuck in a market being driven by 4 to 5 major players, and you have to succumb to whatever their demands for prices are. For example, computer parts right now, we can't just argue and demand they drop the prices. I mean, there's a market, and there's a market of people who are willing to pay that price. Yes, it hurts your average everyday consumer, but the companies are not seeing the bottom end fall out. They're actually seeing the ceiling rise.
Yeah. And same thing with employees. It sucks to say it, but like, as competitive as the job market in tech is getting, that's not leading people to get out of tech. That's leading the people in tech to just go crazy with what they're learning in their education. And people are getting bachelor's and master's degrees in tech and still landing pretty entry-level roles. And they suck it up and keep learning rather than switching career fields. So you see the same thing with people. These companies are not going to pay you more when the market agrees that you can get away with paying less.
There was a time to where you didn't need a degree. You didn't need a degree.
Yeah, there was. And it wasn't that long ago.
And the craziest thing is that this probably goes a little bit back more into marketing. Degrees just have really good marketing in terms of getting people success, when in reality, in today's current tech industry, certifications and experience especially will dominate a degree any time of day. When you come fresh out of college, you may have some experience, but you don't have a lot. And if someone doesn't have a degree, but they've already been in the field, they've already had jobs, they already have a proven track record, I hate to tell you that $80,000 worth of debt that you have accumulated to try to get a nice high-paying job and a decent cushy role is going to go to the person with more experience than you. People are failing to realize that tech is just as much of an experience-based industry versus just knowing the knowledge. Now, going back to the topic, where is the money going? Don, what do you think? What could these companies possibly be spending the money, essentially their cost savings from cutting employees, where is it being reallocated to?
My best guess is that these companies are just going all in on AI infrastructure, and they're just spending ridiculous amounts of money to try to not get left behind, not even really understanding what they're spending money on. They're like, oh, we need data centers, oh, we need more AI, oh, we need more. I mean, I've heard of companies like incentivizing people to use AI tokens when writing code, and they get incentivized based off how many tokens they use. So you can literally just spam AI tokens to get good reports, to get good performance reviews, rather than just creating good code. So I think this money is going into the same pitfall that's creating this problem in the first place. And that's just, instead of realizing that AI isn't giving you the return on investment that you had anticipated it would, they are doubling down into AI and hoping that in the future things change, and that, you know, like you always hear, AI is one step away from this and one step away from that, and we never reach that point where it's like, okay, this thing has done something incredibly useful or incredibly important, to the point where it deserves the amount of money and attention that it's getting.
Well, you know, the problem is that the economical effect from any of these AI data centers is very temporary. An AI data center is only going to really employ roughly 100 employees max. And people fail to realize that when they bring up these numbers of saying, hey, this AI data center is going to bring thousands of jobs to the area, these are temporary jobs. These are contract workers. These are construction workers. They are not talking about long term. We're talking about roughly 1 to 2 years, depending on the scale of the project and the speed at which it needs to be completed. Now, you may ask yourself, hey, why do they keep laying off people and then turn around and spend hundreds of billions of dollars on AI? So I asked myself that same question, and I wondered, what percentage of these layoff cuts would cover their AI spending?
Oh, and this is an incredible take. This is an incredible take.
Incredibly sad is actually what it is, Don. I have the 4 major players right here today, with the highest being Meta at 5% and the lowest being Microsoft at below 1%. So these layoffs are barely even touching the spending that is going into AI. And if you even look at this over a 10-year time period, the layoffs still wouldn't cover the amount of spending in 2026 alone on AI. Even if you combined Meta, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, all of them across a 5-year period, they still will not catch up to the spending today alone from those cuts.
So you're telling me that close to 200,000 people are going to be laid off in 2026, maybe even more, due to trying to save money to buy more AI, but the amount of money that they're going to save by firing those 200,000 people multiplied by 10 years isn't even going to cover the spending that this company does in 1 year alone, 2026, not even talking 2036, where it's likely going to be like 3 or 4 times more, that it doesn't even cover it.
And you see, this is the interesting part, because every single time, if you go to any single news page, MSN, whether you're on your phone on news app, wherever you go and see your news, I'm sure that you'll see a headline somewhere about workers being laid off. And the funniest thing about this is that this is always to please investors. They don't want to frame this as, hey, we overhired, we overcalculated, we expected the digital demand to continue growing, but once it started going back down to pre-pandemic levels, they started trying to justify these layoffs with saying that they're replacing it with. So all of the tech workers in specific, that what we're talking about today, specifically, very specifically tech workers, I'm talking Oracle, I'm talking IBM, we're talking about...
Okay, what positions are getting laid off? And are these people are any senior people within these companies getting laid off, and what positions in particular are getting laid off, and what positions in particular
the majority of positions getting laid off are actually middle management.
Oh, well, I don't feel so bad about that anymore. So the technical workers with real skills and software developers, they're not losing their job as much, right?
No, these are mainly middle management roles. A lot of these were filled because there was actually. Let's go on to the next slide. So let's understand the tech layoff wave. So we have a couple of points right here, guys. 2020 to 2022, 2022 to 2024, and 2024 to today. We're just going to start with the first one with the rapid headcount bloat and the cheap money era. Now, this is what I would like.
Go back one side. Go back one side, please. I love your first bullet point for the current era, 2024 to 2026, data versus hype gap. This is just an incredible slide. I think it's an incredible perspective to look at things.
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Now, the first one was, everybody remembers when the pandemic hit, there was a huge hiring boom in tech industry overall. And this mainly had to do with nobody going outside, everybody staying inside, everybody using more technology, everybody was bored. The way for people to connect at that time was, of course, through your technological device, i.e. a computer, phone, whatever it may be, iPad, tablet. I like to call this the cheap money era because they were actually getting extremely low interest rates from the government when they were borrowing, and a lot of these companies used it to spend on riskier projects that had actually no guaranteed ROI or ended up having a low ROI, and most often they failed to pay off. Now, this was actually a time to where a lot of these companies saw a huge surge in money, and so at a time it was very easy to justify hiring a lot more people to suit that demand. However, this headcount surge would end up coming at tripling the workforce from the year prior in 2019. So over the course of just from 2020 to 2022, the majority of these companies actually end up tripling their workforce. And this is one of the things that I want people to really realize, that over the next 2 years from 2022 to 2024, there was a course of strategic correction. And so, Don, what this kind of came about was when the economy began to reopen, a lot of these tech companies started to stagnate in growth because a lot of consumers' money was being spent in other areas that were, for lack of better words, suffered due to the pandemic. And this is where we started to see the market actually react because CEOs were not using the correct buzzwords. This was so interesting to me, Don, was that actually one of the huge reasons for them shifting into AI and actually using AI as an excuse for laying off tech company employees was because there was a huge dip in the stock market once the pandemic ended. Well, I don't want to say ended, but hit its curtail, and we started opening up back into society and started going out again. The hugest reason for this was because your corporate heads, your executives at these companies, the Big Four and any other tech company that you can think of, they actually were telling and being very honest at this time with the investors that they had overhired, and that a lot of the projects that they were going into failed to see any return, which wants to lead me into our current day situation. Don?
I want to say something.
Yeah.
Can you go back a slide?
Yeah.
So what I'm gathering from this is that these tech companies are working in an extremely volatile environment, and the pandemic created a big opportunity for these companies to basically just try things out with cheap money and free money, basically.
Yes.
With almost no downsides, because if they can't pay it off, they can just get bailed out because it's COVID and they're taking a risk and they can get government subsidies and tax write-offs and stuff.
Not to mention the interest rates on these were at an all-time low.
Because America was probably scared that if we didn't keep producing tech during the pandemic, that we were going to fall behind. So they probably made any incentive for companies to keep producing tech. And I think the honesty that, hey, this was just a crazy period in time and now we need to dial it back some because it's not working out exactly how we wanted it to. Scared investors, I don't understand that though, because if you look at Warren Buffett's view of the stock market, it's like these people are trying to avoid the stock market coming down at all, which I don't understand, because if you're in it for the long game, you saw a huge surge in almost every single tech company's stock during the pandemic, and then when the pandemic's over, you should expect it to go down a little bit and then stabilize and then start slowly rising again. That's just how stocks work.
See, audience, this is exactly why me and Don made this podcast right now. So if you take a look with me at example, we'll go back one slide. Take a look with me for a second and take a look at a couple of these companies' highest margin of revenue. With Amazon, for example, coming with their online services, right? Apple, a little bit different. They're not exactly a big player in that AI industry, but take a look with me over here at Google and Microsoft alone. We can see that the majority of the revenue is coming from Google search plus other, as well as Google Cloud also making come up. But I want to remind people that Google search is their most AI driven product currently to us, as well as Microsoft made a pivot only a few years ago when they got a new CEO back in 2016, that they would switch and make their focus on cloud services, and that is where they're at now. And this plays into the AI hand infrastructure. And if we move ahead, we can see that Facebook is a little different, but their advertising all comes from this. And if we need to know that Facebook actually makes a fuck ton of money, I like when you guys look at these pictures right here. Yes, I get it. Amazon, Apple, Google, and Microsoft. You see their revenue is a lot higher, but what you won't see in these images is that Meta's profit is actually up at the same amount percentage wise. So when we talk about percentages, Meta is not running into the red no more than any of the other companies. Now, if you take a look over here with me at Nvidia, this is a little bit of an old graphic right here. It didn't actually take into account of the boom that happened towards the end of last year. But Nvidia's total revenue has actually ballooned up to be above Meta, above Microsoft, above Google, and it's currently sitting just below Amazon in terms of their total revenue made this year alone. Now, if we go back here, let's talk about the data versus hype, Don. Now, most of my research did show me that a lot of these layoffs were just corrections from the pandemic overhiring.
Yeah.
And that's the sad part, is that this could also, I see it as being a PR nightmare, but these companies, they don't care about the PR to the consumers. They care about the PR to the investors.
That's crazy though, because in my mind, a company telling me we're going to lay off people so that we can use AI to save even more money, to lay off more people, to use AI to save our, like, that sounds horrible to me. But if a company came up and said, hey, we had a temporary surge in business, we hired a bunch of people, now we don't need them, so we're going to fire some people that we don't need, like, that's understandable, and that doesn't make me hate tech companies as much. To hear that it's because of AI and because your market value is going to keep rising and you're going to get more money off of this right now and it's never going to go down, like, that just sounds too good to be true, and frankly, like I'm being toyed with. Now,
this is the most interesting part. Now, full clarity, me and Don, yes, we use AI tools to help us assist in this podcast, do with a little bit of our research, help us develop our guidelines, but they will never choose our words in this podcast. As a matter of fact, this is a one take podcast, people, just so you know. We don't do no second takes. We don't go back here to edit out to try to re-record anything. It is one take. So the interesting part is that AI tools are currently not even strong enough to replace whole teams, let alone a few developers within a team. And actually, the majority of engineers who do use this to help them, it only saves them a few hours a week. Now, Don, I feel like this is something that you were just talking about a little bit earlier, is that AI is not capable of actually replacing humans at full length scale yet. And I think that we won't actually ever reach a point to where it will, because, and I'm not sure if you guys have heard this term, AI hallucinates. It hallucinates. It gets things wrong. It mixes up things. It confuses things. I don't know if you guys realize this, but while you're sitting there waiting for a response, it is scouring the web. It does not have the answers automatically in its head. And you want to know why? That's because information is forever ongoing. Unless it's already etched in history as a fact, if you're asking about something ongoing and current, the answer can change day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute. And AI will sit there and search forums, it'll take opinions, and it'll mix up opinions with facts. And that is why oftentimes when I use AI, I like to check the sources that it used, and I try to tell it specifically what type of sources to use and how to use them. Now, these companies are also betting on the future, Don, because they aren't cutting employees for what AI can do now. They are cutting entire divisions from their companies on what they hope AI will be able to do someday, not what it's capable of now.
These companies are pulling so much money into AI, they're not seeing an ROI. The stakeholders are not happy, but instead of backtracking and say, guys, we fucked up, AI is not as powerful or as good as we had anticipated it to be, we're doubling down and saying, oh, but it will soon, and then fire a bunch of people that are actually going to make your company better. I mean, the amount of profit is there. You don't have to fire these people. You really don't. Even if they're middle management, they're not exactly, like a good company is going to find other areas to put you in. If your team changes roles, if the mission of your team changes, at least you're not out of a job. I mean, it's ridiculously like childish to just fire people because you don't need them. If you have the money to support them, you're not treating them as people. And I want to talk about your AI hallucination, because that's a real thing. If AI determines that something is true, it's kind of hard to, it's either too easy to gaslight AI into believing that to change its mind, or it's too difficult to where it'll never change its mind. And the huge problem with this is that AI is designed to be likable. And that's something that humans don't have. A human knows right from wrong, and if their job is to do X, Y, and Z, of course you can socially engineer a human, but it always comes back on that human. You didn't do what you were supposed to do, you can fire. You're not going to fire the AI. You can't find the AI. You can't sue the AI within your own company if it does something that you don't want it to do, and you can't train it to do better because the model is so large that it's extremely hard to train large models, because you either erase tons of work that led up to how advanced your model is right now, or you try to add on to it and you end up not being able to overcome all the previous flaws that are in it. And you know what's the main way that you train AIs? What's
that, Don?
Other AIs. So you see where the problem can kind of multiply itself.
That's actually very interesting, because at first I was going to say that the majority of early AIs, as far as I was aware, they were going through and taking from Wikipedia pages, they were taking from books, and the problem with this was that a lot of this material is copyrighted. And this goes into that sort of gray area of should these companies pay people for the use of their work in training their AI models? Now, another thing that I want to point out with AI models, I think that people don't really realize a huge upgrade when they try to say, hey, it's a new AI model, ChatGPT will do this, is that it is just essentially a different algorithm by which it learns. That is the major difference. And now, guys, Don, was there anything else you want to say about that?
No, we've been on this for a while, and I think we touched on most of the major points.
All right, guys, we're about to wrap it up here. Here's just a little call to action. Tech companies are blaming everything other than themselves to please investors, but the truth is they overhired, mismanaged, and are now trying to rebrand the same cuts as innovation using AI as a catalyst and driving force to make these excuses. And so what is something that we could possibly do, guys? Well, in my opinion, we can push companies to prove their decisions are based on actual results. No more excuses, no more buzzwords. We need to question the narratives and try to demand more transparency. If they wish to use AI to reshape the workforce, they should at least be honest to us about why and accountable for how it impacts society.
Yeah, show us the numbers and stop trying to conflate things and buzzwords especially. Like, I know we used it a lot, but I wish people would stop using the word AI altogether, because 99% of investors, I bet, don't even really understand what it is.
That's so true. Guys, you guys are right. I believe we're actually wrapping up towards the end and the limit of where we can be with this podcast, guys. We will be back with you next week. This has been Don.
Leave some comments. Yeah, leave some comments what we should do next and what you thought about the podcast. We're trying to make a community here. This is not going to be your average run-of-the-mill podcast where you just kind of watch it once a week to tune in on what's going on. You guys, in the comment section, once we get a little bit of a family going, you know, we're going to start going live. We're going to start talking about things in person. If this gets super big, you know, we'll obviously have longer streams where we just chat it up and everyone can get smarter and everyone can build a family and network and be involved in things that are interesting and making the world a better place. So please, please, please be active, and we will listen to every comment.
Yes, sir. This has been Don, and
this has been Don.
And we'll be back with you guys next week. Thank you for watching the Don and Don Tech Talk Podcast Episode 2. Peace.